obviously it's very underwhelming summer. Even like fucking Russo and Joe Smith, like we've had like nothing to write about, which is we actually don't know what to do.
Traveling, they're like, this is awesome.
Like this is really weird. Joe Smith is actually this is a great like introduction to Minnesota because I
oh my god, I got a month and a half off too. I didn't have to cover the playoffs. Like this is great.
I did nothing. It was phenomenal.
Like
because that was in my whatever. My job description was like, just do what the team does, and the team's like, well, we're doing nothing. Like, oh, okay. But obviously, no marquee major signings in the offseason. They bring in like guys like Lettieri. They make the trade for Maroon. Other than that, but I really do think, in the fact that he stayed healthy last year, Marcus Johansson's like somewhat of an addition this upcoming season because that line, now that Eriksson Ek is healthy, 100%, and will be starting fully healthy this season, the line of Boldy, Eriksson Ek, and Johansson was so good. And like it's, I think I pulled up the stats earlier. Let me see if I saw that tab open actually. I do. They played 166 minutes at 5-on-5. The goals for was 14. Goals against 4. They had all of the high danger goals. They had 58% of the high danger chances. They had almost all the scoring chances. Like that line to me is solid. And I mean, you saw what Boldy did when you added Johansson. And along with that too, I think that gives you some flexibility with that Kaprizov Zuccarello top line, who the center is. Whether that's Hartman, who we've seen it before when he's healthy, he's been great there. He scored over 30 goals. If he's injured, that's an opportunity for a kid like Marco Rossi to step in, not really have to be the guy driving the play, not really needing to be the guy that's like, hey, if he doesn't score, this line's got nothing. At the same time, he's already proven he can defend well in this league as a forward too. So I think weirdly enough, like the fact that you have that Johansson, Boldy, Eriksson Ek line to lean on a little bit, I think they should be able to score consistently. They're going to give you good defensive hockey as well, but that kind of opens up options throughout the lineup as well. So yeah. I'm a big fan of the fact that they re-signed him, first of all, but it's almost like it is like an addition in the offseason. Because like you look at last year too, at the beginning of the year, well, realistically, actually, like throughout the entire season, did they have a healthy lineup? Like ever? I really don't think they did. Someone was out. That was like a big part of their fucking lineup at all times.
Well, that's why they had all that money to throw around at the deadline.
It fucked them so hard at the beginning of the year too.
Yeah.
Granted, and I mean, like,
they were fucked at the beginning of the year when they were fully healthy too. So
yeah. Well,
that first like 5 games was rough.
It was brutal. I don't know, but like, I really do think that just seeing what Marcus Johansson did because he stayed healthy all year, where if he had just been there, if that was what he did from the start of the year, like if he was on that line and he stayed healthy, because he did stay healthy, like his numbers, like he broke all of his prior like personal bests. So I do think, number one, that gives you hope. First of all, that they've got a top 6. They've got 2 lines outside of Kaprizov and Zuccarello that can reliably score. But I also do think it like somewhat opens the door, like on lines 1 and 3. Like I really want them to give Rossi a shot. Like if the first, well, I would have met, well, and I said this before you and I jumped on here, but like I would assume that they'll never say it, but they've got him penciled in on that third line with Foligno and Gaudreau, which I think actually, again, that's more opportunity than he had at all last year. But I think it actually could work out fairly well. But Two, if you flop him and Hartman or flip him and Hartman, Foligno, Hartman, Gaudreau, that could be a pretty solid, hard to play against third line.
I'm gonna say that is like a piece of shit line.
Right. And like doesn't really at that point, like you don't really need Hartman to be a center at that point either. You're not like leaning on him to put up all the points in the world. So like in the inverse, like Rossi now has the opportunity to play with two of the like premier skilled forwards, playmaking forwards in the league, where you're not needing him to be the one driving play. So it's just weird to frame it in my because I did it. But it's weird for me to frame it as like, but part of that is because like you have that second line of JoJo, not Mojo, JoJo. And you've seen it too. Like it's not like the tiniest of sample sizes too, right?
It is a small sample size that needs to be addressed though.
Right.
But what I think though, like that not enough people talk about, because I agree, like bringing Johansson in, I thought it was ridiculous at the time, and I am so wrong. That was a brilliant move. I really don't think Ek gets as much credit as he should for how that line runs, because it's how balanced they are across the three, right? Like you've got Boldy who can drive play, whether it's with like his playmaking ability or that shot. Johansson's opening up the ice with his speed. And then Ek is the guy who is the fucking sledgehammer. Like he's going to the dirty areas, he's getting in front of the net, and he's got the ability to keep up with those guys and not be a hindrance offensively. And I think any one of those players removed from the equation fucked it all.
Yeah, and I think at this point, Eriksson Ek's proven himself to be like, in terms of, we know what he is defensively. He's been an elite defensive center for a couple of years now. But I mean, I think over the past 3 years, he's shown you that in an average year, he's a 20 goal, 20 assists, 25 assists, like an average to like below average year, I guess, like slightly below average, I guess. But he's shown you he can give you 20 goals, 30 if he really is playing with those guys. Who knows, 35, 40 assists. He had like 2 years in a row where he scored their most power play goals. Like
you want to do a fun little thought experiment here? What if Marco Rossi put up 7 points in his first season, 16 points in his second season, and 14 points in his third season?
Who would that sound like?
Break things and say he's an absolute bust, right?
Who would that sound like?
I don't know. It sounds crazily similar to the exact stats that Joel Eriksson Ek put up.
And by the way,
weird.
And consistently proving that he can be at the very least a solid defensive forward. Like, oh yeah, that'd be weird. It'd be weird how that would work out.
Yeah, and I mean it's even more relatable because Ek definitely missed an entire season of critical development due to almost dying. So
they should actually put that like this prior year due to near death. That's it. Yeah.
God, it's so bad because I support Rossi like through and through, but now whenever someone goes in and like says positive things, it's like he missed a whole year. I'm just gonna drop but did he die?
No, you can't. You can't. Well, do it when I'm not around. All right.
This is a brilliant idea, by the way.
Oh, Jesus Christ. I would die.
Thank you, Jason.
Sure.
And just while you're totally spiraling out of control.
He didn't pick his.
It's so great because you can pick up on my nonsense and like you don't bite for a second, but if Cosgrove says it, you like the wires cross and you just like malfunction.
My wires never cross a Cosgrove, but
you just about
never down. At no point has his nickname. At no point has his nickname ever been Mojo. It's been JoJo on his stick his whole fucking career. His stick.
Yeah, did he write it on there or did someone else?
Oh, for fuck's sake. Anyways, we gotta move on. Listen, the last thing I'll say about that though, times 19, is we should also as a collective fan base, like give Eriksson Ek more credit, because people are always like, oh, they need centers. They need centers. They don't have a top 6 center. They don't have a top 6 center. It's like Eriksson Ek is signed for another 6-7 years. He is what, 26, 7 years old, whatever he is.
He is 26.
26 years old. Well, is that not a top? Is he not a top 6 center? Like, you know what I mean? Like, people never factor him in ever when they're like young prospect.
I think it's more like you need a number one center. We have never had a number one center. I don't think that Ek is a number one center. You need that number one center because it shifts everything down. Like you said, solidifying the second line gives you so much more flexibility to figure out the first and third lines. If you get that 1C, everyone moves down a slot and you're like completely change the whole dynamic of your team. I mean, you're seeing the opposite of it with Boston, where you just
I was about to use Boston as an example. Historically, you look at Bergeron and Krejci, they're two perfect number 2 centers. Neither one of them. So, like, I think when people frame, like, the way people frame, like, the number 1 center is like point per game guy, like tons of like playmaker off. Like, I think really a lot of times it gets framed as like the offensive part of it. And in Boston, you had David Krejci and Patrice Bergeron, who were 2 elite defensive centers, obviously, with Bergeron at least. People don't understand until you look at like the numbers when he was in his prime for Krejci. That motherfucker was unbelievable defensively. Neither one of them ever was over a point per game ever in their careers. So that's why for me, I'm like, it doesn't really matter with Ek. Like, he is at the very least a second line center. He's going to be one of the best defensive forwards in the fucking league for years. And he's giving you 20 to 25 goals every season. He is on your first power play unit. He's doing literally everything that you ask a forward to do. He's going to be logging crazy minutes for a forward. Like, for me, if that's my number 1 center and you've got a guy like Kirill Kaprizov, you got other dynamic playmakers, we'll see what happens with guys like Daniil Yurov in the future, Liam Ogre in the future, Adam Beckman in the future. Like, the list goes on and on. He doesn't necessarily need to be the guy that's like the number 1 playmaker on his line if he's going to be a number 1 or number 2 center. So that's where I always push back. It's like the Bruins just did this for 15 fucking years and they missed the playoffs twice. Like, with Bergeron and Krejci in their like peak. So I think a lot gets thrown at.
I get what you're trying to say.
No, I know. I'm just using Ek and that. I'm using the Bergeron and Krejci thing as a crutch because, like, neither one of them, again, it's the same profile of player. Obviously, it's different caliber.
I think Bergeron could be a 100-point player if he like focused on that element of his game. I don't think Ek could.
Yeah, but even then, though, like,
I'm not saying that he should. My point is, there's still more offense there.
So, I mean, like, when the offense really, really took off, it was with Marchand and Pastrnak. So, Pastrnak might be the best right winger in the game. Might be. Marchand is a top, 5 left winger of the game?
Hard to say, but yeah, I'll give it to you.
Like, so even with them, it wasn't like he was putting up like 40 fucking goals. He wasn't a dynamic playmaker. Like, and I don't think if he was on a line with like Jake DeBrusk, I mean, they had 17,000 fucking right wingers before. Oh God, the poor Krejci had to get stuck with forever. Krejci had a couple of years of Nathan Horton. Other than that, he was a fucking revolt before Pastrnak, though. Like, if he didn't have, like, at no point was he going to be a guy that was going to put up 80 points.
Sure.
So I think he, like, obviously he improved offensively as his career went on, but at no point was he like the go-to guy on that line for offense. Like, he was, the fact that he did what he did his last year as a hockey player is fucking believable. As his, like, half his body doesn't even work anymore, and he's still the best defensive forward in the fucking league. It does his thing, but
yeah,
Yeah, I don't know.
All right. Well, before we transition into prospects then and hopefully get the fuck out of here in 2 hours, I don't care if it's 2 years from now or 5, Minnesota Wild are in the Stanley Cup Finals. Is Zach your 2C or 3C?
I mean, it could be by 2.
It's just a question.
I mean, at this point, I think it really, well, what you said 5 years from now?
I'm more saying, like, I don't care if it's 2 years from now when we get out of cap hell or if it's 5 years from now. I'm just saying, like, roster construction, like, do you think it's likely that he is the 2C if the Wild are contending, or is it more likely that he's a 3C?
I think
I don't know how I feel about this. I used to be really firm that he would be a 3C if the Wild contended.
I think 2.
I'm split. I'm split on it.
I think the I don't want to use the word.
Oh my god.
The way I look at it is like, can he be a number 2 center on a Stanley Cup team? Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, at this point, they've gone out and drafted so many fucking centers at this point. At the same time, he's proven himself that he can score 20, 25 goals, put up 25, 30. Like, he can put up decent points in this league, and he is an elite defensive center to the point where he's going to be, in terms of your forwards, he'll be a top 3 guy in ice time as is.
Sure.
Yeah. I think he's on a Stanley Cup winning team with how good he is, proven that he is the past couple of years, and just like his actual, like his arc of like in terms of development. And then even once he became a full-time NHLer, like continued to skyrocket how good he was.
But again, he is the case study for calm the fuck down and let him develop. Like,
right.
What more do you need? Come on.
Right. Exactly.
Let Rossi have a second to fucking breathe.
1 second. One or maybe a year to breathe again. You know, just once he can like fully take deep breaths again.
Well, dude, like literally 3 years ago, I can't believe we took him over Besser. Like, now look at that.
Yeah.
And you've got everyone, but look at all the guys that we passed on when we took Rossi. Huge reach, by the way, for Judd Brackett to take him there.
Yeah, I can't believe it. It was just the worst decision of all time. You know what? That fucking that scallop risotto actually sucked. Yeah, I take it back. His restaurant's terrible.
Just fair point here by Mateo too, like Tage Thompson.
Yeah,
I think he's a little bit more. We'll call him an outlier, but it's fair. Also, I don't think Marco Rossi's gonna grow an entire foot, but you never know.
He could though.
Late growth spurts.
You never know. I did.
God damn it.